Hello, welcome to today's tutorial on Introduction to HTML. My name is Bentil and I'm going to take you through Advanced HTML. In our previous video, we talked about Introduction to HTML where we listed the HTML basics and fundamentals. So here we are going to do Advanced HTML. And what's the Advanced HTML all about? So in this lesson, we are going to look at lists in HTML. So we have HTML lists. We have two types of lists, which is the ordered and unordered list. We are going to see how to code them. And then we will look at form elements as well. The form elements, we'll be looking at select, input, buttons, text area, field sets, and the rest. Then our last thing to look at in this video is HTML tables. Now in lists, we have two lists as I first stated. We have the ordered list and you have the unordered list. What does the ordered list do and what does the unordered list do? We are going to run the code and see the output ourselves. Then in the next, we are going to look at the form element. Now the form element is used to create an HTML form for user input. So maybe you want to accept user input like a login form, a contact form, or a user registration form. We are going to use the form elements. And then we have various inputs that we put in the form element. We have input type, text, radio, checkbox, submit, and then input type button. We are going to look at what all these does, but there is a brief description of what they do. I'll be leaving a link to this lecture slide in the video description, so don't forget to check it out. Then this is how the form element and the input is implemented. So we have the form as the parent tag, and then we have the input and then labels in them. What does the label and the break, the BR here mean? We are going to look at them all in a bit in the upcoming um, slides. So we have the select here. We have how a table looks like, HTML table. We have the simple table where we have a header and then table details or descriptions. Okay, so let's start coding. So before starting this video, I'd already created a folder here called PukkaTech. So that's what I'm going to use for this tutorial. Go ahead and open this in your VS Code. If you've watched the environment setup, you know the text editor we are using in this course is the VS Code. So go ahead and open your Visual Studio Code. Okay, so in the Visual Studio Code, you go ahead and open. Okay, so let me open the PukkaTech folder. So open folder, and then I'll go to my desktop and then I'll search for the PukkaTech folder that I created earlier. Alright, so this is the folder that I created. Already have one file in there called index.html. Let me delete it and start this thing afresh. So I'll click on this, which is new file, and I'll name it index.html. Sorry. So in the index.html, in the earlier video, we told you how to get the HTML template. So you do this shift and 1 so that you get this, and then you click on the first exclamation mark, so you get this beautiful HTML boilerplate. The title of this video, let's make it Advanced HTML. Okay, Advanced HTML. And then we are going to start with list. That's from our slide. We are going to start with lists. Okay, all right. So in the list, let me quickly do a header tag here, h2, and I'll name it lists. All right, so let's open this in the browser and see how it works. In the environment setup video, I believe you installed the live server extension. If you have not done so, go ahead to extensions and search for live server. Now this extension helps you to run your code without refreshing the browser anytime you make any changes. So this is the live server extension. Go ahead and install it, and then you can use it as I'm about to do. So I'll just right click on the index.html file, then open with live server. So it's going to open this in our browser for us, which is Chrome in this case, what I'm using. All right. So what am I going to do? Let's see how to do for P. Here I'm going to call it unordered list. So in the unordered list, let's see how you do it. It's an UL, unordered list, UL. Then you hit enter. Then the UL is the parent tag. Each list item is going to use the LI tag, which is the list item tag. So let's say in this unordered list, I'm going to give a list of fruits. Okay, I'm going to give a list of fruits. So I'll have here banana, and then in the next I'm going to have, let's say, pawpaw. So I'll be having orange. I'll be having, let's say, apple. Okay, so let's see what this does, and we are having it here, right here. Let me split this into two so that you'll be seeing it as we code. All right, so this is what we are having here. So you can see that if I add any of them, li, we have here mango. Okay, so we have mango added. Now this is what the unordered list does. It just gives you a list in an unordered form. It is just a bullet. It doesn't mean that the mango should come first and then orange should come second. This in an unordered form, any form that you are listing the fruits. Okay, so what if I want to create a list where I want it to be numbered? That's where we use the list, ordered list. Okay, that's where we use the ordered list. So let's take a look at how the ordered list works. P for ordered list. Now in the ordered list, we are going to have OL for ordered list, OL, ordered list. And then each list item is going to have the LI tag just as in the unordered list. So here I'm going to have, let's say in the ordered list, I'm going to give a list of, or let's say steps in creating a folder. Okay, so in this one, you get to know that it is steps. So it has to come one at a time. It is in an ordered form. So here, right click on an empty space on the desktop. So we have this here. So it gives you the clue that you can't skip this one and do the second one first. You have to do this before you go to the list item 2. Okay, right click on an empty space on the desktop, select new, then you go to the next step and then you select what, folder. Okay, so this is a list. It must come in an order. That's why we use the ordered list to do that. So we have this unordered list, which gives you just a raw list without any order, and we have the ordered list, which gives you a list in a given order. Okay, now an ordered list can be changed to start from, let's say, A, B, C, or I, as in Roman numerals. Okay, we can do that using the sorry, using the CSS, but here let's leave it like that. We are not going to add any CSS to this. So in the upcoming videos where we start talking about CSS, you get to know how to change this as well. Okay, I don't want to introduce any style in this lesson. All right, so this is for lists. So let me go here and then change the name of this file to lists. Okay, so that just right click on it, open live server, then it comes as a list. Okay, so that there will be difference in the thing I'm doing here. So let me go to form.html. Right, so in the form.html, same thing, shift and one, then hit enter to get your HTML boilerplate. All right, so in here we are going to talk about form element. All right, so in HTML form elements, let's see elements, form elements. And then here we are going to see how a form is used. Okay, so let me open the form in the browser first. Okay, so this is the form element, and then we start by typing form. Okay, and then it comes in this way, form. Forget about the action. Now the action is used to specify where the data from the form is to be sent to. Okay, so where the data that we are actually coming to collect in the form should be sent to. Right, so for now we are just going to ignore the action. But it takes a couple of attributes. It takes the action attribute and it takes the method attribute. And the method is the method in which the data you are collecting from the form is to be submitted. We use the get to submit through the URL. We use the post to submit um, sensitive data, which is not shown in the URL. All right. So let's go in there. And now here we are going to talk about inputs. Inputs. So let me do a comment here. Now this is how we do a comment in HTML. Comment is basically a short line of code you write that is not rendered on the browser. Okay, a short line of code you write which is not rendered on the browser. So you just do this. You type your comment here, so I can type whatever in here. It is not going to get rendered on the browser. You don't see this on the browser, and then you can just go ahead with your next line of code. So in the inputs, we are going to have a couple of inputs. You have input type text, which comes in this form. So input is a self-closing tag. It's a self-closing tag. What do I mean by self-closing tag? For instance, for the form, you have this opening tag and you have the closing tag here. But for input, it doesn't have an opening and closing. It's a self-closing tag. So input. When I type input here, you see it doesn't have any closing tag like this. No, inputs do not have that. Inputs do not come in this form. Okay, so you just have to ignore this guy here, and then you have to go ahead. Sorry, the form has been deleted. Okay, so this is how input comes. Now we have this input type text. It's used to enter any form of text, okay, into your data, name, username, and the rest. This is why we use the input type text. Now it takes an attribute called placeholder. Now the placeholder is the text which is going to be displayed in the input when the user has not entered anything. So for instance, enter name. So you get the enter name right in the text, so it gives the person a clue as to how to enter in this input. Now we have input type email. Now this email input type is going to allow user to enter an email. It allows user to enter an email. Let me change the method to, let's say, post. Changing the method to post. Now let's see, let's bring a button. Okay, so input type submit. Now submit is an input button which is used to submit a data, okay, in a form. So I want to submit a data, so let's see submit. That's it, it has shown here submit. That's the default values, but you can change the value to, let's say, login. You can see, and it comes like that, login. So this is the text which gets rendered on the button. Okay, so let's see, if I want to submit this form, I can come here and enter my name as Bentil. But in the email, if I enter anything which doesn't look like an email and I click on login, the browser is going to prompt me to enter something which looks like an email. Why? Because input type email is requiring you to enter an email. So until you enter at, and even so, if you hit enter, this doesn't look like an email, they'll tell you to complete it. So at Gmail, com. This time it will get submitted. You see, it doesn't take you anywhere because the action is set to nothing. So let me remove the action, and then let's see how we get this thing done. All right, so then at gmail.com. If you submit, it doesn't take you anywhere because the action is not specified. All right, so let's see other type of input we have. Right now we've seen three types of input. You have the input type submit, and then input type email, input type text. What about input type button? Now, the input type button and the input type submit literally looks the same on the browser, but they have different operations. On the button, if I click, it doesn't submit this form. It doesn't submit this form. So let me come to form and say action. And I'll say the action should take me to list.html. Okay, good. Now, if I click on this login, it doesn't take me anywhere. But if I change this to input type submit, and I click submit, it will take me to the list.html. Okay, list.html. What am I having here? Let me see. It's lists, not list. It's lists. So let me add this to it. And then let me go back. Okay, so here we are. If I click on this login, it takes me to list.html. All right. So what I want you to see here is that the submit button actually submits the data, okay, but the input type button do not submit the data. It does actually nothing to the form. So we have other inputs. Let me bring a break tag here. Now what does the break tag does? A break tag actually breaks that line and then sends the rest of the code to the next line. Okay, so you can see it has break this input from the rest. So on this line there is no going to be any other code on this line. It has break it. So let me add two break inputs, break, so that we have a space in between. So here too I'm going to bring break, and then good, I have this one coming down here like that. Okay, so let me do another input type number, and then here let me break it twice. All right, and then the placeholder will be something like enter your age. An age is a number, so your age should be a number. So it gives you this thing here where you are supposed to, you can do the up down thing and just enter any number. Okay, if I enter a text, it doesn't show. Okay, if I enter a text, it will never show because it only accepts a number. But if I enter numbers, it works fine. All right, so that's for input type number. We have input, sorry, input, and the type is checkbox. Input type checkbox. Let's see what this thing does. Okay, let me break this guy. Break, so that the button will actually come down here. So this is input type checkbox. Now the input type checkbox is used to select literally multiple items from a list. Okay, probably you have a list of options, you want a user to select multiple of them, you can select more than one. That's where we introduce the input type checkbox. Now let me introduce a certain tag here that mostly goes with the input type checkbox, which makes the work more easier. So let's say we have label. Now label for what? So let's say label for let's say a list. So let me give a list of colors. So color one. Okay, right, and then I bring this input type checkbox, and then I'm going to give it, this label is going to be, let's say, red. Okay, so color one is what? Red. Now let me bring the break statement down here so that we will be having a break for the button anytime we are just working on it. Okay, so red, and then if I click on this red, you see it doesn't do anything. But because I said label for color one, if I change this and give it an attribute called an ID, we'll be talking about ID and classes very soon. So if I do ID of color one, now if I click on red, you see it gets the thing checked and unchecked. Anytime I click on it, it gets it checked. So we have label. So let me copy this guy and paste. You can copy and paste it a couple of times. Now you can use the shortcut Shift Alt down to duplicate it. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to get this for color 2, and then color 2 is going to be, let's say, blue. Let's do same. Okay, so let me quickly do this. Color 3. Change this guy to going to be color 4. Okay, so the label actually is used to give a description to the input that you are trying to put out there. So for instance, for here, I can add label for name, and then I'll come here and say enter name. So you see, I'm going to have something like this. Enter name, then it comes here in this way. But since the placeholder is kind of doing the same thing, you can ignore this. But it's mostly essential to bring the label for each of the these things you do. So label for label, and then here for email. So I'll do here enter email. Okay, and then for the rest, so here label for, let's see, age, and here I'll see enter age. Alright, so it looks like this. Okay, so we can select any color that you want. Actually, I've selected more than one color. I've selected all of them. That's input type checkbox. What about when you want the person to select only one from the list we have inputted here? That's when we use what we call radio button. So that's when we use what we call radio button. So let me copy this guy, come down here. This for radio buttons. Now here is for what? Checkbox. So let me do for checkboxes. Okay, so for radio button, I'll copy the checkbox and paste here, and then let me bring a break to separate these two. Okay, now here what I'm going to do is change the checkbox to radio, and then yes, I'm going to change this one to, all right, it's okay. It's okay for that. So you can see I have to be changing the IDs as well. So let me use this for, instead of color, let me use it item. Okay, all right. So this is how it's going to do. We have red, blue, pink, black. Now, for checkbox, you can select more than one item, but for radio, it's supposed to select only one item at a time. But this is the case, our radio is allowing you to select multiple items at a time. Why so? It's because the inputs are independent of the other. Why am I saying they are independent of the other? It doesn't have any name which specifies that all this input belongs to one group. So we can give them a name for color. Okay, all right. So we can give this name color to almost all of them. Now it's going to group these inputs. It's going to group them. So it means that you can select only one color. There is a color, there is a color, there is a color, and that also is a color. And for radio, you are allowed to only select one item. So that's when you, if I select red, I can't select blue. It will deselect the red and select the blue. If I select pink, it leaves this one. If I select that, it leaves the other. Same thing. It's very essential to bring name. Okay, it's very essential to bring name. Let me use this as colors just to differentiate the names from the radio buttons. Okay, all right. It's very essential to bring names. In fact, not only for um the checkbox and the radio buttons, for all inputs it's essential to bring names so that when you are submitting, for instance, we are going to use a language like PHP to submit, it will need the name of the input so that it will get the value from it. Okay, so it's very essential to be doing that. Name, this one is going to have a name for, let me say name, because I'm taking name from that. And here name is going to be email. I'm taking email, and here name is going to be age because I'm taking age. Or you can better still make it username, user email, and here user age. It makes sense, right? That's what we are doing here. So we have seen different types of inputs up here, how to apply label. Now you can see here for the label, I did label for name. If I click on this label, it's supposed to highlight this input because it's showing that this label is for this, but it doesn't do so because I didn't give this input an ID. So I can give this input an attribute called ID name, and then when I hit on this name, it just selects that input for you. So label for email mean I have to give this one ID email. Label for age mean I have to give this one an ID age. And if I hit this, it just selects that for me. And that's the magic the label does. So the label for the four attributes and the value you give to that attribute must match the ID value to that particular input you want it to handle for you. So if you look, we've looked at a couple of inputs here. We've looked at a couple of inputs. Let's look at select. Okay. So select. So this checkbox trying to check a couple of items from a list. What if I want to give you a drop down for you to select an item from? Okay, so I'll just go like, for instance, months. Okay, and you are supposed to select just one. So let's try to do something like um a calendar here for you to select the day and then the month. So let's do select, and the name for this select is going to be day. And then I'm not going to give it an ID for now. So let me go into the select. And each select is going to take an option. Okay, each select is going to take an option for, let's say, all right. Now here, I think I'm bringing the button here. The button, I mean the submit button should always be the last thing in the form. Okay, so let me bring it here and then break it as well so that it will go away from our select. So this option is going to be day one. Okay, and then the actual value in there will be day one. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times, and then I'm going to change the value. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so for time's sake, I'll just leave it at day 6. But you know we have 31 days in um, a month. The maximum number of days we have in a month is 31, so you can do it up to number 31. I'm leaving at it at 6. So here I can select any option I want, right? So let's say day 6. Today is 6. And then we go to this ID is for days. Okay. And then we can bring a label here. Label for days. Since the ID is this, and then we see select day. And it goes like that. Okay. Select day. Right. And then let's go to the next one. Now in inputs, in select, always this one is going to be set to 1. But what if I don't want it to select any day for me from the start? I can just go ahead and say, okay, now this option here is going to be value nothing. I won't give it any value, and I'll give it selected, and then I'm going to say select day from here. So in this case, the this one is going to act like a placeholder. You understand? Just like the way we are having placeholders in the earlier input, this one here is going to act like a placeholder. And for that matter, let me ignore the label. So the label will not show. Now, if I click this drop down, I can come back to select one, and I can come back to select the select day again, which is not necessary. I don't want you to select that one again, so I can say disabled, so that it just gives you a clue of what to select there, and you cannot select that guy again. It has been disabled. Good. So that's our placeholder. Now let's go ahead and implement select again for, let's say, months, and then I'll go in here and each select option should come. So option for January, and I'll just be showing. I'll do that. Let me shorten it to just 3 months here. Okay. All right. So we have March, and then we have April. So this is a select for a simple calendar here. So you have select day, which you can select seats, February. That's great. So here too, we can give it a placeholder, where the placeholder is also an option, but then the value is going to be no value. Okay, we aren't giving any value, then we make it selected, then disabled. So it is selected and disabled, and then we are going to say select month. That's it. So you see select month, but you cannot select it back. So for instance, anytime I come here, I want the selected to be the number 6, because today is 6, so it will automatically select 6 for you. And then here the month is February, so it will automatically select February for you, and then you remove the selected from here. Okay, so it means that anytime I refresh this page, I'm going to have this one as the selected value. So the selected attribute is used to select the one you want, the value you want to get selected by default. Okay. All right. So we've looked at a couple of inputs, and I believe I will leave a link in the description to the other form elements so that you can check them out. So let's move to tables. This is for form elements. Okay. So let's move to tables. All right. So let me create this one for table. Okay, table.html, and then here I'll just bring this guy here, tables. So we have this list, we've done form elements, and now we are going to tables. So let me pin this guy also in the live server. So it comes like that. You have tables. Now, how do we create a table? Now, a table is basically arranging data for simplicity. You understand? We have been using tables in Excels, in Microsoft Word, and the rest. So in HTML2, how do we put certain data in a tabular form? Okay, in a tabular form. So let's see. We do that by introducing the table tag. Then in the table tag, let's see, we have what we call the TR, table row. Okay, TR means table row. So in this table, sorry, we have the T head, which is for the table header. Okay, then in the T head, we are going to have TR, which is going to have TH for a header element. So let's say This header element is going to be your ID. If you are in a school, you have your student ID, then probably you are going to have your name, then you are going to have your email. So we are going to take user data and then probably let's say the class that you are in. Or here instead of email, let's use phone. So your ID, your name, your phone, and then your class, which is quite simple. Okay. Then that's for the T head. Then you come to the T body. T body is actually where we are going to populate data into the um table. So we go to the T body. And then in the T body, we introduce TR for each row. Okay. Then in this TR, we are going to have TD, which means the detail or description. So this TD is going to be, what is my ID? 1. What is my name? My name is going to be Bentil Shadrack. What is my phone number? Phone number is going to be 1234567. What is my class? I'm in class 5. Good. So that's how we do that. But you see, it's not quite arranged well. We are not seeing, it is not nice. It doesn't look nice. You see, you don't even know where this guy ends and the rest. That's why we have border attribute. So you can set the border attribute to let's say 1. Good. Now we have a border around them like that, which separates the items for you to see exactly what is going on in there. Okay. So um we can have we have phone number, we have class. So what if I want to expand the table class to another th here, and I'll say date. Okay, date, but I don't want to show any date here. Okay, so I can tell this guy to have a call span of 2. Call span of 2, what does it mean? It means that I don't want to show the date, so the class field should cover both the class and the date. So call span is actually used to break more than one cell. You know, each of these is called a cell. It's used to break more than one cell. So I can let it be call span. By default, it is 1. Each call span is 1. So 2 means it's going to take 2 cells. All right. So let me take this guy off. Was just to demonstrate what the call span does. But then we can have another tr up here. And then in this tr we are going to have a th. Okay, and then this th is going to be like user info. Okay, so you can see that that th is taking just one cell, so I can tell it to have a call span of, let's say we have how many cells here? 4. So I can tell it to have a call span of 4. So you see, it breaks and have almost everything on that particular row. Okay, so that's how the call span is used. Now let's see how we can populate the table. This T row can be duplicated multiple times, and you can see it gives you everything here. So it means that each user data is going to have be wrapped in the row. So the T row is TR. TR. Why am I saying T row? Anyway, so TD, we have ID2, and then name here is Ken. And the number, let me leave it like that, he's in class 2. That's that. So each user data is going to have its Thank God it's Friday. Okay, so let's continue. Um, yes, the video just went off, so let's continue. All right. Now this is how we populate actually a table. So the next one can go into this tr. The next one can go into this tr. Let's say this one is going to have a user id 3, then ben, just any name. I don't know. I'm just entering in name, and this one is in class 6. Okay, so it just populates the table for us here like that. Okay, so per the slides, I believe we are through with everything here. We've talked about select input buttons, text area. We didn't talk about text area in the form. We didn't talk about text area in the form. So let's see how we can shape in the text area. Now let's go to the form. All right, so text area is not different from the inputs, just that it gives in the input you are supposed to enter everything on one line. So text area is where you are supposed to enter something like a description, which is going to be multiple lines. Okay, so let's see how the text area works. Let me put the text area right under the edge. Okay, so here I'm going to say text area, and the name is going to be, let's say, about. So in this text area, you are going to write about yourself. Okay, so let me break this guy. So in this text area, you are going to write about yourself. So let me give the label here, label for about. I'll give the ID to be about, and here I'll say describe yourself, something like that. So this how the text area looks like. So it gives you the chance to write on multiple lines, and then we have the calls, and then the number of rows. So we can change the number of rows to, let's say, 40, which makes it looks weird. Okay, so 4, and then the row, we can change the row to, let's say, 40, like that. Okay, so it expands it for you, and as you type you can be expanding it in case you think is going wayward for you, or you can't see, you can expand it. That's why we have this thing at the bottom here, so you can expand it anytime as you are typing to it. You'll be scrolling for it to go through. So that's what actually the text area also does. Now they are all form of input that we use to accept data in a form. The video is becoming lengthy. We will end here, and then in our next slide, or in our next tutorial, we are going to start our final project, how to design a web page, so that we begin the css and then start learning how to apply css to our html. I'll leave a link to the lecture slides in the video description, so you can check it, so that download the slides and read through yourself. And I'm going to leave a link also to the source code here, so that you can check the code, and then in case you are not getting anything, you can refer from the code. I'm going to leave a link to this whole code also, so that you can check it out. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.